Okay, welcome. We are excited to have you here today. As you can see, this is our webinar for our districts that we invited special to join us today. Now that you have the data, what's next? We're going to explore some of the powerful solutions available in Aware that can help elevate your district's data conversations. This webinar is going to help you understand how to use the tool to turn your data into actionable insights. We are going to have Emily and Stephen as our presenters today. Emily's one of our account executives, and Stephen is our solutions specialist. And today's being hosted by myself, Marie Hayes, and my partner, Brittany Douglas. We are your account managers. And just a reminder, this session is being recorded and it will be sent to you within 24 hours after the end of the session. So you will get all of this in your email. You can also visit our YouTube channel for past webinars if you want to catch up on some of our learning from the past. And participation is encouraged. So please use the Q&A window and ask questions along the way. Emily and Stephen do an amazing job of pausing as they present to ask for questions. But if there's something that's on your mind and you don't want to forget about it, just go ahead and type it in the Q&A and Brittany and I can be sure that that gets to our presenters. So again, welcome. We thank you for joining us and I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Today, we're really going to look at really what Marie said. What are you doing at this time of the year? So, how are you viewing assessments through the course of your school year? And what does that look like as far as reviewing standards and seeing student growth? And what are good data pieces to look at different times of the year? So, to really kick that off, we'll really start with the cycle that you're going through in your district, pretty much as a reoccurring cycle. So you know that students are learning, they're taking an assessment, teachers are analyzing the data, students are reflecting on that data, and then they're identified in small groups. They get some sort of reteach and practice. And then hopefully we're reassessing to make sure that that practice or that intervention helped to support students' needs. And then we go back through the cycle with a different set of learning. So what we're here to do is to help you make this cycle more reliable and for you to be able to verify that it's happening to ensure that it is actually effective. So with that being said, you do have a chat button. Marie mentioned that you have a Q&A button, but you also have a chat button. So if you want to give us some feedback, this is just kind of to hear from you about how many assessments has your district or your campus delivered so far, now that we're almost in November. So you can give us an A, B, a C, or a D for any of those ranges, or you're welcome to just type in a number in the chat. All right, I saw Susan. All right, I'm seeing some responses come in. Oh, a whole bunch. I see some B's, some D's. Okay, yep, that is exactly what I was thinking. More D's. Okay, awesome. So you've given a variety in order to be able to assess students, and you're ready to start drawing those conclusions. That's honestly where I was thinking that you would be. And sometimes that does vary on your district, and it does vary based on what's happening within your district. So we really want to lean into the time period that it is. And we'll just talk about what is important at this time of year. And so we're going to go through this timeline of what is your assessment at a year at a glance. And so this is one of those that's just kind of helpful. Like Marie said, we'll send you this presentation. If you're like me, I like to keep little snapshots of things like this next to my computer as we're going through these processes through the school year. So we'll cover some beginning of year. What does it look like? And we'll really lean into Aware Premium, but we're going to show you how you can do everything in Aware as well. And so you don't have to have those premium features. You'll see both sides of the system, and we'll give you some tips and tricks as you go through beginning, middle, and end of year. And like we said, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. Marie and Brittany will stop us, and we are happy to answer those for you because this is your time and this is your learning. So I believe I'm kicking it over to Stephen, and Stephen's going to talk to you a little bit about what aware data analysis can look like on an everyday pattern.
Thanks, Emily. So as we get started and we talk about looking at data, like Emily said, on an everyday pattern, and we're going to take you through both Aware Premium and what that can do for you, and then traditional Aware, the things that you already have if you have not upgraded. right? We want to make sure that we hit both of those for you. But as we talk about an everyday pattern, we're really talking about single test analysis and how that might look for you, right? And so let me just get to mine. And what I'm going to really do is just take you through it. We have some slides, but I just think it's so powerful that it's better to see live. And so if you don't have single test analysis, here's what it looks like. We really tried to make single test analysis easy to see, to make some decisions much faster than you normally do, but also let you do some other things, right? And so if you think about traditional where in your quick views, that spreadsheet style data, sometimes you have to go across and kind of keep your finger there. With single test analysis, everything's on one screen, right? I have 3 tabs, but right away I can see how my students did. Not only that, I can see how close were they by raw score to move up a level or to move down a level. So as soon as I click on a test name, in this case, my 4th grade math test, I'm able to see what number of students were in my formative assessment, formative developed, accomplished, approaches, meets, and masters. And as I'm looking at this, if I look at that raw score of 17, all of those students, it was those students perform, that was my highest number of performing students. They were one raw score point away from moving down a level, right? So how can we keep them there and possibly move them up? So single test analysis really lets me see that at a very quick glance. I like numbers, but if I'm a percent person, I can toggle between percent and numbers. But something we just added a couple weeks ago is the student list. I have my data at the top, but now I can also see who those students are and what those demographics were or are and what those raw score points they earned were. Right. So really quickly I can see where my students lie. Again, the student list is very new. But what I can also do at the top is I can start to add some filters. Show me the students who maybe scored a 16 and a 17, right? These students barely missed that approaches performance level, or these students barely made that accomplished level, right? So 1 point more, they could have moved up, or 1 point less, they could have moved down. And so I can filter by that group. And once I filter by that group and hit apply, then I'm looking at just that group of students. Another cool thing that we just added is now that I've kind of filtered for the students that I want to look for, I can actually go and create a monitor group from here, right? And it will automatically add those 7 students that I filtered for into this monitor group. Now I can't edit a monitor group from here, but I can certainly create a monitor group based off of the students that I filtered for, right? So again, really quick, I was able to do some filtering, make some decisions on who I want to monitor, and let's start following these group of students, right? Looking at a single test in time, that everyday learning, right? But I also have this demographic distribution, and I can see how the students did by demographic. Now, with this demographic, it's only showing the 7 students because that's who I filtered for. So if I reset that, then that's all students. And here's how we did there. Again, I changed it to percent, but I can change it to numbers. All right. So really quick, if you think about quick views, all of this is in rows, but I can see everything on one screen, right? And I can filter from here. Okay. If I'm a teacher, then I can filter or I can drill down by class period. But if I'm a campus administrator, then I can choose teachers and campus administrators, or I'm at the district level, then I can choose campuses, teachers, and then classes. Okay. But this is how our students did it in this test. And we started off very broad, and we're going to start to narrow our focus. So I'm going to click on the learning standard summary and say, okay, I know how my students did, but how did we do by the learning standards? And when we go to that learning standard, it's going to display each standard and percent of correct scores, but we're also going to give you an additional piece of information. Now, in order for this additional piece of information, which is depth of knowledge, you either have to use an item bank that has depth of knowledge associated with that question, for example, Teaks Bank, or if you're writing your own questions, then you have to associate the depth of knowledge to that question. But if you're doing that, or you're using an item bank that has that associated, we're also going to display that as well. right? So now I get to see by standard how we're doing across each standard. But what I can do is start to change the way I'm looking at my data. How did we do from high to low? What was my highest performing standard, right? Or what were my lowest performing standards? And as I start to look at this, I can see my lowest performing standard was 4.2G. Now it has a 2 there. That's simply telling me that we assessed it at depth of knowledge 2. But if you're looking at 4.5B, it has a 1, 2, and 3. That doesn't mean that we asked that question 3 times, possibly. But what it's saying is we assessed that question at depth of knowledge, or that standard at depth of knowledge 1, 2, and 3. Okay. If I had 2 questions that were depth of knowledge 2, would still have just 1, 2, it would give you the average. It's just telling you here's the depth of knowledge that standard was associated with. So if I click 4.2G, that was my lowest performing standard. It's actually going to tell me the question that was assigned to that standard, question 9, and we tested it at depth of knowledge 2. Or if I click on 4.5B, that was my next lowest performing standard. We tested depth of knowledge 1 at question 2, depth of knowledge, excuse me, depth of knowledge 2 at question 12, and depth of knowledge 3 at question 5. Right? But it was my second lowest performing really because of depth of knowledge 3. I can see 4.3D depth of knowledge 2 is a little bit lower than it was for 4.5B. But now that allows me to go back and look at that standard and asking what, or seeing what it's asking the student to do, right? What skill is it asking the student to do? Should that question have been assigned or associated at depth of knowledge 3? And we're not saying don't ask that question, but maybe really that standard should have been addressed at depth of knowledge 2. Maybe I'm not concerned with how they did necessarily at question depth of knowledge 3, and they didn't do too bad. Maybe I want to go look at 4.3D as my second lowest, right? But here I can see by depth of knowledge, how are my students performing? Okay, by standard. And if you click on that standard, it will also show you each question that was associated with each of those depth of knowledge. So now I know that 4.2G was my lowest performing standard, right? And I'm going to take a look at it. That was question 9. I'm curious what question 9 was. So then I'm simply going to move to the item response analysis. And what this is going to display is the percent of students that earned points. For your students who got correct and incorrect, that means that they got everything right, right? Or it's right or wrong. So those are the students who got credit, full credit. The rest are showing the percent of students who earned points. That doesn't necessarily mean they got it all right. For example, in question 10, it's 100%. That doesn't mean 100% of the students got it all right. That means they earned something. So 1 point at the very least. Okay. But question 9 was where we struggled the most with. So I can go and click on question 9. And I can scroll down and see what that question was. And it was a text entry question. Right? It's going to give you the question. It's going to give you the answer. And it's also going to show you the percent correct versus incorrect. Right? Again, these are things that you can do in traditional aware, but this is much easier to see. Everything's on one screen. But what I love about this the most is I can also see what the students answered, right? And again, in traditional aware, in quick views, you'll get to see ABC if the student answered ABC, but you won't see for these technology enhanced items what the student answered. You'll just see 0, 1, 0, 1, 2. With single test analysis, I can truly see how the students are interacting with each question. 3.08, 3.08. The answer was 3.08, but if I scroll down, I had a student that typed in 308. All right. Maybe they just forgot the decimal. Or if I have a question like question 11, if I go take a look at that, right, not a single student earned a single point. I can go and take a look at this question, and then I look at this question, I notice I didn't put a right answer for row A, true or false, or for C, true or false. I wrote this question incorrectly. So I know I can go weight this score to 0 or this question to 0 and rescore it because there's no instruction application. I didn't allow the students to fully answer this question. Okay. And lastly, constructed response questions. I get to see how many characters, how many words, and if I click the student's name, I can see how they actually answered. On each of these, anytime I click a student's name, I get to see how they answered. Okay. I had a drag and drop question. 7 feet of rope were used, or if there was 7 feet of rope, 2 feet 3 inches were used. What's left? Right? 4 feet 9 inches. I can go and see how the students responded. I see a couple of students put 4 feet 7. I can also filter by response to say who else put 4 feet 7 inches. These are the students that I might need to go back with and talk about how many inches are on a foot. There's 12 and not 10. Okay? So single test analysis really was designed with teachers in mind. Anybody can use it, but it's really to let's get in there, let's look at some data, and let's make some decisions, right? And old aware, before we had this new navigation, it was a lot of clicking on the left-hand side to get the data you need. Now with 3 tabs, you should have all the information that you need fairly quickly. All right. Emily, I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Stephen. So I'm going to go through the other side of that and how you can really take, if you're not an Aware Premium district, how you can take the features that you have and get through that same process and hopefully give you some tips and tricks along the way. So Stephen did a great job of showing us that performance data matters, learning standard summary matters, and then viewing that individual item response and misconception matters. So I'm going to show you very quickly in quick views how you can get through that exact same process with what you already have. So as you're in quick views, you can easily click on one test or multiple assessments, but we just want to look at the test we just gave. So I can go ahead and I can change the view up here, but in this case, I really do want to see performance. So I'm going to go ahead and apply and look at the data from that performance lens. And so I can see things right across the top as far as overall performance, approaches, meets, and masters. I can break that down by campus, by teacher, and by student very quickly here as well. If I then want to go into a further step of looking at my learning standards, I can select that learning standard breakdown and take myself through that data analysis portion as well and see that same type of information. And finally, I can also go to that student individual response as well. So this piece is extremely nice that you're able to see all of this within 3 clicks of getting through quick views. And we have those broken down because those are pretty custom for everybody's process of getting through the data. So as you do things like this, what I want to continue to enhance and help you with is there are some options to save your data view. And so we notice that not every single user knows that they're able to save a view. When you do, there is a
Emily,
benefit.
Emily, I'm going to pause you for just a minute. It seems like some people are having trouble seeing the screen.
Oh no.
So
Okay.
just pause. Some people can see it and some people cannot. So I see some troubleshooting going on. It says click Emily's screen up at the top, and that's how other people are being able to see it. Okay, they're saying
Okay.
that worked.
Okay. I'm sorry. Do we have some dual screens going on? I'm sorry.
Okay, now so click Emily's screen at the top, and then you should be able to see this.
Well, that's fancy. You gotta love technology when it does things like that, right? Okay.
And they're saying,
Perfect.
can you please just kind of briefly
Yeah.
show that
Yeah,
one
let's
more
go
time?
back over that. If you can't see it, then you're just like, she's talking at me. So I was really reiterating that Stephen said we need to look at that performance data. We want to look at learning standard data, and then we want to look at item response analysis, right? So I'm going to go into good old quick views. I'm going to select the assessment that I just gave. And then I can go ahead and click apply in order to just view this data. It's great because it's already going to take me into that performance level summary where I can see the district, I can see the campus, I can see a list of teachers, or I can see individual students. Of course, if I'm the teacher, then I get that information. I really like looking at the data from an overview because, again, that's what we just looked at. What was the overall percent score? How many kids were approaches, meets, and masters? And we can see that very quickly here. And we have those categories broken down on the left as far as our student populations as well. So we're able to get through that very quickly within Quick Views. And then the beauty of it here is you just change your view. If I'm ready to go to learning standards, then I choose the third built-in view and I can go to that learning standard breakdown. I have the same summary options again, so I can still see those standards and what the actual standard was and where and how we assessed it. And so that piece of it is nice as well. I still have that same information. And then when I'm ready to see that final step, I can change my view to student individual responses. And I'm able to see how my students actually responded here. What's nice is you do get a bit of that built-in misconception. So if I did have an ABCD, I can see what the students selected. And if there was an area where they picked B instead of A, I really get insight into what particular answer choice they chose instead of the correct answer. So some other things that are nice, people may not know, but you can click on this really tiny little box with an arrow and you can view the actual question number one. I think if I click on it, you won't see that window, but you can take that to another window will pop open and you can actually see what question one was. And so you're still getting the benefit of being able to see that question. You just won't see how every student interacted with that particular question within Quick Views. As some other nice pieces throughout the system, what I was mentioning is you can save any data view. A lot of times you may not necessarily want to save a data view. We'll talk in a little bit about why you may want to in the future. But if you do any type of editing to your data view, then you might get to a place where you're actually wanting to save that data. And so by selecting and saving that particular data piece, what it will do is it then puts your data in the data views bank. And so if I went in and let's just say I filtered and I said, I only want to see learning standards where students achieve less than 30%. If I had built that filter and that's savable, that's some good data that I might want to save. And so it will land in my data views bank and I can choose to star any of these that I really like or I plan to use again. So I don't have to star it. It will still live here because I saved it. But one of the major benefits to starring your data is it does appear in the overview screen. Yay! How many of you love not clicking multiple times? I love not clicking multiple times. So that is a great way to be able to get to your data very quickly and to just continue where you left off within the system. As another little tip and trick while you're using Quick Views is you can, now that we have a filtering system at the top, so we no longer have that tree method of clicking down to get to the assessment. Hopefully you're excited about that. I know that was a transition, but something you can do, if you notice, I have mine already pre-filtered for 8th grade math. And the way that I did that is I set my filters at the top and then I clicked on this little button on the side that looks like a bookmark. And when I did that, I saved my filters and I selected the star, again, that good old star, next to my preferred default method of viewing the data. And so if I am overall 8th grade math, then that may be how I set my filters. And so now, no matter where I go in the software, when I come back to Quick Views, it holds that information so I don't have to refilter. You'll also notice I built several filters. So if that's something that you need working at the district level, you may want to create some of those for different time periods of the year as well. All right, I'll pause real quick, make sure I didn't have any questions. I was not paying attention to the questions. Nope, we're good. Okay, perfect. And as a last little piece, another element that you can utilize in the system is by saving a data view. You can then choose to share the data view. So this is a really powerful piece. I saved my view, and only after I save my view can I now share my view with other people. Okay, so we'll talk about this very quickly. I had mentioned maybe if you created a data view that you allowed teachers to see learning standards where students performed less than 30%. If I wanted to share that out with teachers as a template, because I don't want teachers to have to recreate that in the system, that's time consuming, then I can choose to share that particular view at the district level, if that's my access, or at my campus level with my teachers, and I can build it in as a quick view so that it automatically shows up in their list that is right here as a particular shortcut. So if I had saved that view, I could call it learning standards less than 30%. They could find that right here and navigate no matter what subject they taught. If you taught math, science, social studies, it is a template. So it does in fact apply to every area. And I just gave my teachers a Christmas present because they never have to create that particular view for themselves. So I did see a question pop up. If you want to delete one of your data views, you can do that within the system. After you click on the pencil, you can choose to delete that particular view on the red X. So if you can't do that, then that means that that data view was not created by you. It was created by someone else within the district, and you should have their name. So you could ask them nicely, could you please delete that? We no longer need that. And that is a way to get rid of some of those if you see a bunch of different save views that you no longer need. All right, so I covered going through those data points, saving views, creating filters, and what your data views bank does. The last piece that I really wanted to show you and remind you that is extremely helpful is being able to go through those pre-built reports. So those are something that are still incredibly beneficial. So in that report section, alongside the analysis portion of your navigation, you can still go and utilize things like the incorrect response report. I am still a big fan of that report. It helps teachers to identify student groups based on questions and learning standards. Outstanding. I love that both teachers and administrators can now view the constructed response report here as well. So if you want a good old printed report, or if you really want to look at how students answered those constructed response, you now have a report that does that for you. And then last, if you just want a good report to be able to share out with parents, that student test summary is great as well. And then if you are utilizing Lead Forward, you get all of those Lead Forward reports as well. And we'll send you again this presentation. It'll go over those. If you don't have the Lead Forward reports, it automatically takes your data from Aware and it generates these reports for you. Extremely helpful. Then we can get you additional information on Lead Forward. All right, I will pass it back over to Stephen.
There we go. Mastery tracker. Right. And what Mastery Tracker really does is lets us see how students are doing over time. Are they mastering that specific learning standard? Again, this is Aware Premium, but what it's going to allow the teachers to do is choose a list of tests or a number of tests. And when they choose those tests, it's going to combine that data. And really what it's going to do is give that teacher two sets of data. The first one is going to be the total raw score. What's the most number of raw points that student could have earned for that standard? And what did they earn? 2 of 6, 3 of 6. But again, we're looking at it over time. So maybe they struggled at the beginning and now they got it. So we're also going to give you their latest raw score for that same standard. What's the total number of raw points they could have earned on their latest assessment that had that standard? And what did they earn? right? So again, two pieces of information: total raw score, latest raw score. What did they earn out of possible points? Okay. Once the teacher has that data, we're going to allow that teacher to assign a level of perception. And only teachers can create mastery trackers, but we're going to allow teachers to give a level of perception. And we allow them to do that because it might not just be the data. There might be some things going on in the classroom, projects, classroom observations, other things that the data might not tell the whole story. And we're going to allow that teacher to give a level of perception. And we only allow for 3 perceptions. And we give you exceeded, mastered, limited, but we also let you choose what terms you're going to use. No matter what terms you use, whether you use the 3 we give you or you create your own, you're going to want to have conversations with your teachers as to what that means for you at your district. Okay? Again, only teachers can create them, but campus and district administrators can view the teachers' trackers. Okay? You'll be able to filter by standard type. Just show me the readiness standards, right? But it's also going to allow the teacher to enter notes. Here's why I changed that standard. Maybe the data doesn't tell the full story. Here's why I moved them from what would be limited to maybe exceeded, right? So the teachers can set those perceptions, they can enter notes. But what I really like about this tracker is the summary overview. It's really like a teacher report card. It's going to summarize that data for that teacher. Again, here we're going to show that data by depth of knowledge. How do we do by depth of knowledge? Either by number percent, right? Average, by DOK 1, 2, and 3. The average raw score across all tests, right? But then those average perception levels. Here's going to let me see where I was weak in a specific standard or where my students were weak, right? What else could I have done? Is there some support around that standard that I can get, right? Maybe over a course of a couple of years, I'm low every year on that standard. Let me get some support. Or what are other teachers doing? Okay. So it's information at the tracker level, but really it's summarizing that data. And what's really cool about the summary overview is in traditional aware or aware how it's always been, when those students move to the next grade level, that teacher loses that data. This data will now stay with that teacher year to year, right? It's summarized. There's no student specific data here. Right, so I now have some data to hold on to from year to year. Those trackers will also stay in the student's profile. So when that student's new to me, I can visit their individual tracker. So as they come to me, where were they low in the previous year, right? How can I kind of make those up as we're beginning the new school year? Okay, really, how are our students learning over time? Again, only teachers can create the trackers, but campus and district administrators are able to view those trackers. But we can also do this in quick views. As we talk about quick views, again, that's kind of changed a little bit. I can select 3 or 4 or 5 tests, right? And then I can choose the view that I want. Let's say student learning standard breakdown. How have they done over those standards, right? We want to see where they've mastered. But I can choose to summarize by subject. Now it's going to have each of those standards and a summary or an average of those standards. So again, we're allowing you to do the same thing in quick views. Select all the tests that you want, and then you can summarize. The only difference here is now I can't give it a level of perception, but you're still able to see standard mastery and how my students are doing over all of these tests combined. But as we talk about, it looks like we might have a question. Yeah, absolutely. And let me see if we can show that to you live. If I go to quick views, I can go and choose all of the assessments I want, right? And I'm just selecting some of them. I can select all the tests that I want, and I can choose that learning standard summary or that learning standard breakdown, and I can choose summarize by subject. That's going to combine all of those tests and give us averages by standard. Now, I probably chose a couple of assessments that don't mix, But had they, right, it's going to give me, and I notice I chose math, reading, and science, but had I chosen all math, it would have given me my summarized results by standard, right? So if I go back to my screenshot, I selected 3 or 4 tests. I chose the student learning standard breakdown, and then I chose summarize by subject. It's going to average all of those assessments and give me how we did by standard. All right. It's going to show me, and I know it's hard to see, but it says here's Eric. Eric had a total of 3 tests, and then here's how he did by percent on each of those standards. All right. So there's both ways, right? In Premium, I can use the mastery tracker. In Quick Views, I can add multiple tests and then summarize by subject. But as we always talk about Eduphoria and how our applications work better together, we also have aware student portfolios. I can create a portfolio to determine student growth, right? And it's our most accurate way. And then I can also tie these student portfolios to my student growth goal in Strive, right? I can use assessment data, writing samples, rubrics, and it looks something like this. If your teachers or you have never created a student portfolio, you can choose the students you want to use for your portfolio. And then you can also then add the type of data you want. Do you want to build a skills profile and then give that a rubric? Or do you want to use testing data or both? And then at the very end, we can still assign a student growth level, right? And again, you can tie this to a student growth goal. This will also, once it's in my student growth goal, it can be added to the summative as well, right? So there's an example of working better together. I can build it in Aware, my student portfolio, but I can also use that same portfolio in Strive. Okay. Emily? Really quick, any questions on Mastery Tracker, the student portfolio, or Quick Views? All right, if you think of something, I'll be in the chat. Emily?
All right. I'll go ahead. We'll do the toggle one more time. Let's see if it'll let us do it. Okay. Can you see my screen? Did it work?
I can see it.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. So we'll extend on that and we'll say, how do you track student growth? Because again, we're really talking about this time of year. So Stephen was leaning into the mastery tracker and utilizing quick views to see multiple learning standards over time. Once you've given, just like you told us, 5, 7, or 9 assessments, that's a good time to start aggregating your data to look at what is it looking like long term and over multiple assessments. That also plays a part in tracking student growth. So how are we seeing if students are showing growth at this time of the year and what are we utilizing to do so? So I'll continue with that middle of year and then I'll wrap it up with some end of year practices as well. So here's another little opportunity for you to give me some feedback in the chat. So how are you currently comparing performance across assessments? So are you we export all the data into a spreadsheet and create it on our own scales? I'm going to go ahead and tell you that was me. In my prior district, that was my job. Do we transfer data into a third-party program? Do you have something else you put it into? Do we kind of assume the scales are similar enough and just cross-compare what we have within Aware, or we really aren't cross-comparing these different types of assessment over time? And that's okay. No harm, no foul. So you can give us what you're looking at. Are you a spreadsheet type person? Do you have a database you put it into? Where is that going? So I'll give you all a couple of seconds. Yep, spreadsheet. Tracy says she's the spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets, so spreadsheets weren't really a problem for me, but some people aren't lovers of the spreadsheet. So we'll talk about kind of both sides of where you can go. So if you do have Aware Premium, there is a great option for you to be able to cross compare your assessments on an even metric and really be able to see students' performance levels over time. And I'm going to pause because we do know that that is how accountability is being measured. And so students will show growth from year to year if they are within those same performance brackets. So this is following that mentality. This isn't following student growth on a learning standard metric like Stephen showed you. This is following it on a performance-based metric. So what multi-test analysis allows you to do is, in this particular view, I pulled in about 6 assessments and I cross compared them. And so for this particular view, I may have compared our local assessments. How did our students do on these 5 assessments compared to how they performed on STAR last year, right? That's going to give me that level to where I can see, okay, Eric was mastering last year, and on his assessments this year, he has not mastered a single one. Uh-oh, we need to probably flag Eric and pull him into some small groups, because if he doesn't master again this next year, he will not show growth. And so we definitely want to start looking at him over time. So you're able to see this information very quickly in multi-test analysis. You're able to see it at the individual student level, which is what I am showing you here. And then there are filters as well at the top of your screen when you utilize this tool to allow you to look at those high focus groups. So we know that if you have different performance levels for students' ethnicity, for their economic disadvantage status, and for several other contributing factors, you can look at that information within multi-test analysis, and you're able to see exactly where those student populations are. So that is very critical when you're looking at your data, to be able to see, are our economically disadvantaged students making progress over time? You can easily see this by toggling through a filter. Where this tool allows you to go as well is at the end of every school year, you're really able to view your assessments and see if they aligned. So that is also being pulled out here to really showcase if you're able to cross compare, because maybe on one of our local assessments, it didn't do a good job showing student growth for STAR. It didn't align. So this particular tool will cross correlate your assessments in order to help you write better assessments for next school year. So we want you to not rinse and repeat the same processes, but do them better and give you some tools to help support you in that practice. So where we go from here is a lot of these same things you can still do within quick views. So you can build a quick view to where you are pulling in most of your assessments that you've given throughout the school year. And you can compare anything that you would like. What's really nice is you can compare a monitor group of students, or you can just start cross comparing overall percentages of how students have done. Honestly, anything. But the great part about quick views is I can pull in their assessment from last year and I can cross compare it to the assessments that are being given this year. So one piece I'll show you live very quickly is that you are able to, within the tool, I'm going to grab a couple of assessments. And something that you're able to do that's extremely beneficial is, we'll just say that I'm cross comparing a few different assessments, and I actually just want to see the students who performed less than 30% on the particular assessment. I can create this view. And what is nice is these are only the students who got less than 30% on one of those 2 assessments I selected. And a nice feature that you have is you do have a send button. So if you do need to share this information with your teachers, I can click send and type in my teachers' names that I would like to share this with particularly. and they have the same information that I just created. So by doing this, they receive an email and they have a data view that will show up in their data views bank that they're able to view. So anytime that you're creating any data in Quick Views, just remember that you can easily send it to any teacher group. If you're pulling in all of the assessments for the year, share that out with your teacher so that you're not having to recreate that. You're not having to print that. You have it available as soon as you want to meet, or they have it available at their fingertips. So I will pause very quickly, see if any questions came in. I didn't see any. Okay. The last piece of that is we really talked about standard review to help individual students, and we talked about identifying students that are not showing growth over time. So the last piece of this we really want to lean into is the analytics. Again, so how can you make yourself better from year to year as far as your assessment creation? So within single test analysis, if you do have Aware Premium, we just released test analytics. So what is this showing you? If you identify when you are cross comparing assessments and multi-test analysis that one does not compare to your other assessments and the correlation score is extremely low, then you can go into single test analysis and go to the test analytics, and you can actually look at some of the particular questions. On one of my tests that I was showing you, it flagged a question, item 11, because it really automatically is telling me all of your students missed question 11. It was very, very difficult. You may want to reevaluate if that was appropriate for this assessment. And if it was, great, but your students really did struggle with this particular question. Is it aligned to the standard? Is it what we taught based on our scope and sequence? So then you're able to dig deeper so that next year you can make an adequate assessment, or you can say that was adequate. We just may need to review how we taught that particular skill set in the future. So if you are not part of Aware Premium, you still have the capability to have test analytics. So I'm going to pause real quick because if you're saying I've never seen test analytics ever, that's okay. It is one of the tools that you have to request for that to be enabled for your district. So you would send in a support ticket, or you could reach out to your account manager and say, I would like test analytics to be enabled for our district. And then you can go in and see very similar data. So with test analytics, it only shows up for administrators, and it allows them to see an overview of their assessment by the statistics, by the reliability, by those depth of knowledge, and really be able to see that raw score distribution. So how does your bell curve actually look on your particular assessment? It does go into that same direction that I just mentioned, and it will flag questions for you as well and say this question may not have been as reliable and you want to review that for next year. The only thing that test analytics currently does not do is it does not analyze interactive items. So it only analyzes questions that are multiple choice, and that is all test analytics does if you do not have Aware Premium. And so the premium version does analyze the new interactive questions, and it responds to those constructed as well. So you're able to see an overview of all those types of questions. So if this is something your district is interested in, this is a great end of year practice. It's one of my favorite to actually do, is to review our assessments and see how we can improve them for next year so that we are continuing to make growth for students over time. All right, and then I'm going to bring us together and wrap us up and then hand it back over to Brittany. And so to bring everything together that we talked about, we really started with the beginning of year and looking at data from single test analysis, or the Quick Views way, and those pre-built assessments as well, or pre-built reports, I'm sorry. And then the middle of year looking at mastery and standard tracking over time, and student growth as well. And then for the end of the year, we really focused on analyzing those assessments to make sure that you increase those assessment performance over time. So we hope that that was beneficial as you look at the entire school year and what can you do with Aware as you've given these critical assessments. And a lot of you said 7 to 9 assessments already this school year. So what can you utilize that data and how can it help you to be more beneficial for your students? So I'm going to turn it over, I believe, to Brittany and go ahead and wrap up.
Thank you, Emily and Stephen. That was very helpful information for all of us. And as we conclude, we just wanted to let you know, if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach out to your individual account manager, or of course, you could email support@eduphoria.net. And what you'll see on this slide here, once you do get the recording, you can click on that link, and that will transfer over to your account manager. And that kind of lets us know if you have any questions related to maybe Aware Premium for your district, or you have training needs that you would like to discuss, or if you just want to set up a call with your account manager. We're happy to do that with you. And one more thing, in terms of support and what your account manager can help you with, if you have any questions related to your district's usage data and you just want to know what it is that you are using, we're happy to pull that report for you. Going back to training, if you want to schedule a needs assessment call with your account manager or with our training team, we can facilitate that as well. And once we do that, we can send you a training proposal and quote for you. And as well as we can also help set up training and product consultations with our training team. And lastly, I do want to highlight the Eduphoria Teacher Learning Site, and this is a great opportunity for asynchronous learning. The digital learning site does provide learning content for both Aware and Strive. It's free for all Eduphoria users. It's a great resource if you have brand new teachers to your district. And another thing I did want to point out in terms of Aware Premium, what you'll see within those learning modules for Aware are specific modules geared towards the new Aware Premium features as well. And I think that covers everything. And we do appreciate your time today. And we know that this is a really busy season for everyone. And again, we hope this session was valuable for you. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. Thank you.